not a big deal. But here it is. Any given variable is only valid in a particular area of the program. And in programming, that concept is called scope. All right. So for example, this code that I'm showing you here won't compile. Anyone know why not?
Because I is defined in the for loop and you can't print that outside the for loop.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. So look at this. This is a small example of scope in that, look, this variable I is defined, declared right here in the for loop, for int I equals 0, blah, 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 blah. And it's printing stuff out. Great. And then down here, I try to print I outside of the for loop. And the problem is I only exists in the for loop because we defined it in the for loop declaration line. And so this is just explaining that right here. This line tries to use I after it no longer exists. I know it's like right here, right the line above it, but when you make a for loop like this, which is the normal way to do a for loop, I will confirm there's nothing wrong with this. The variable I is not available later. Now, if you wanted the variable available later, you could do this. Notice in this code, I define I before the for loop starts. And that makes I available in that whole section of code. So it, and then notice if I do that, then inside the for loop, I don't say int I just say I equals 0. You shouldn't have to do this, but I'm just showing you how you could make this work where yes, you could access the variable from the for loop after the for loop. I mean, if you really want the variable after the loop, maybe do a while loop, and then you don't even have this, this issue. So some other big things about scope, and I'm going to give you an example for each of these. Okay, so fear not that I'm throwing 4 things at you, but I'm going to read them off here. When you declare a variable in a constructor or a method, it's called a local variable. And local variables can only be used within that constructor or method. They can't be declared public or private. Parameters declared in a method or a constructor can only be accessed within that method or constructor. And finally, when there's a local variable with the same name as an instance variable, the variable name will refer to the local variable instead of the instance variable. So don't worry, I've got examples for all these things. So points 1 and 2 go together. When you declare a variable in a constructor or method, it's called a local variable, and local variables can only be used within that constructor or method, and they can't be declared public or private. So here's an example of a toString method. And look, I made a little variable here. I say string t equals good, and then I make a little if statement. If all good, if not all good, then we change t to bad, and then we return engine status plus t. So this is something you could, sometimes you do something like this. Now we create this variable t inside, or I created this variable t inside a toString. I can't access that variable t anywhere else in my class. No other method has access to it. Here's, okay, so that's a local variable. That's what local variable means. This t is just only available in 6 lines of code, 5-6 lines of code. Here's an example of somebody doing something wrong. It says this is a constructor for a hamster class. And notice it says private Boolean is hungry. And that's what's wrong with this. You're not allowed to use private or public for variables inside of methods or constructors. So you can't declare local variables as public or private, only what we call instance variables, the class level variables that are at the very top. Any questions so far? Here's another example. Here's the constructor for the hamster, and here's the toString for the hamster. So see if you can figure out what's wrong with this. What's wrong with this code? Someone want to say? I mean, it seems legit, but something is wrong with it.
Is it the Boolean in front of is hungry?
Yeah, it's okay to have a Boolean is hungry, but that is the thing that's wrong. It's that I declared is hungry as a local Boolean variable inside of the constructor. And that means when I try to access that variable down here, it doesn't mean anything. It's not available to us. I mean, the way to fix this would be to, if you need to have an is hungry variable, it shouldn't be declared. This is declaring the variable up here in the constructor. If you needed an is hungry variable that's true or false, you need to have it like private Boolean is hungry, at the very top as an instance variable, not, you don't declare it inside of the constructor. Because I said Boolean is hungry right here, that variable is only available right there, even though like this code seems like, oh, it's legit. We're going to check if it's hungry. We declared it in the constructor. That's what was wrong with this. Okay, point 3, parameters declared in a method or a constructor can only be accessed within that method or constructor. So I'm just going to answer my own question, but the question is, what's wrong with the above code? So let's take a look. We just did a chicken, right? So private string name, and then public chicken, here's the constructor, public chicken string n, and we say name equals n. So far, so good. And then for the toString, we're saying return n. And what's wrong with this is n is a variable that is only available to the constructor because it's declared here as a parameter for the constructor. So the constructor is totally good, name equals n, but you can't use n anywhere else in this class because it was only available. I mean, you could make another method that has another declared variable n, a different local variable, but we cannot use this local variable n anywhere but inside of this constructor. Down here, we'd have to say name, return name, because see, we have this instance variable name at the top level of the class. Name is the one that's available everywhere. It's, in a way, you can say its scope is global. It's available everywhere inside the class, as opposed to it being local. This variable n is local just to the constructor. Point 4, when there's a local variable with the same name as an instance variable, the variable name will refer to the local variable instead of the instance variable. So let's look at my class here. I have a class I wrote called point 4 because we're on the page that shows point 4. We have a private int num. Here's a constructor where we receive a variable n and we save it into num. And then here's update. We receive an integer n and we store it in num, and then get num returns num. Something's not right with this code though. So you make a guess of what you think is going to get printed. I mean, to yourself, you can look at it because I've done something wrong. I'll walk you through the code. We're going to make a point 4 object called P, and we send over 17. So we're going to, that comes right here. So the constructor, we store 17 in num. And then I do p.update with a 20. So over here, public void update with 20. And then here's the issue right here. It says int num equals n. What that means is by accident, or because I'm a bad programmer, I declared a local variable called num, and I stored n into it. I didn't touch this variable up top. When you have a variable, a local variable with the same name as an instance variable, then your code actually refers to the local variable by default. So what's going to get printed here is 17, not 20. Like, even though this update, you're like, yeah, we're updating it. What happens is this 20 number is saved in a local variable called num. And then as soon as that method code stops running, that variable is thrown away. They say it's garbage collected, but it just gets purged from memory. So really the num, that's the class level, the instance variable num, is not changed. I was watching a bunch of the videos on the AP Classroom this last week, and and one of their instructors, who I think is very good, she calls these instance variables data members. I just thought I'd say that word out loud so that if you ever watched one of her videos, you're not like, oh my God, what is a data member? I'd never heard that term before, but I like saying class level variables or instance variables or attributes of the class. But another term apparently is data members. But so yeah, this explains what I was just saying. The instance variable num is up here. Down here in this update method, this is a local variable num. And then down here in the get num method, we're using the instance variable, not the local variable from a different method. It's just how it works.
Isn't your sentence wrong then? Because like on the top you say like the name will refer to the local variable instead of the instance. Shouldn't it be the other way around?
No. See, in
Oh.
this method update, num is referring to the local variable num. It's only local to that method. So inside that method, it is a local variable and it's referring to that. And then down here, num, that's referring to the instance variable. And up here, and this is referring to the instance variable. I guess if you read my sentence to mean that everywhere it's referring to the local variable, then yeah, that would be wrong. But what it means is in each individual method or constructor, if there's a local variable in that method with the same name as an instance variable, then any reference to that variable name is to the local variable. It's just on a method by method basis. So yeah, so inside this middle method, num is referring to a local variable. That's why when we update it, nothing happens. But up top and down below, since it's not a local variable anymore, it's talking about the instance variable. Okay, thanks for speaking up. So in general, folks, it's a bad idea to use the same variable names for your class attributes, the instance variables, and elsewhere inside the class. It's generally a good idea to use different names. So what I'm saying is this is good form. Here's a constructor, string first, string last. And down in here, I say first name equals first, last name equals last. Now, if I wanted to use first name and last name in the parameter list, then I would have to use this special word this on the instance variable copies. Because otherwise you'd have first name equals first name, which doesn't make any sense. So let me just say, if you ever find yourself saying X equals X on a line, that you're well intentioned, but that doesn't work. You have to have different names for the variables. So either use different names in the parameter list, like often I'll do F or L, or first or last, and then the instance variable is first name, last name. So this is great form. And then this is a way to make it work. If for some reason you just feel like you have to have the same names, then the word this here tells Java that we're talking about the instance variable here. Whereas right here, we're talking about a local variable that was just defined just for this constructor called first name. Yeah, this was the last slide. So any questions? We're going to get to practice this. I'm not going to test you on this keyword next week. I mean, we'll practice it more moving forward, but I know I just kind of threw it at you right here. It's kind of nifty though. You're like, oh, I'm talking about this, the one from this class. Okay, so what I've done is I've made